I'm Margot from MovieMaker, and I'm here with Anna to talk about her new movie, Alice Starling, which comes out on January 20th from Lionsgate. So thank you for being here with me today, Anna.
Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just start with when this script first came across your desk. What did you think? What were your first thoughts, and why did you decide to say yes?
Honestly, I think the opening imagery in the movie is the opening imagery in the script where a woman is in the back of a car and she's sort of twirling her hair, and Alanna, the screenwriter, did a really beautiful job of never really spelling out what was happening, but using language. Screenplays are tricky like that because it is like you could just be prescriptive and sort of get the same thing across, but she really created like an atmosphere, and I don't remember exactly what the lines were, but like immediately you knew like there's something strange about what this woman is doing in the back of this car, and it really drew you in, and it was just such like, I don't know, like anxious, evocative imagery that you immediately kind of wanted to find out more. And I think that the fact that Alice, for a good portion of the beginning of the movie, is not that fun to be around, you know? She's kind of a bummer and kind of cold, and just doesn't seem that interested in other people or anything. And the fact that Alanna was willing to let that unfold really slowly and like kind of get you to this point of going, okay, I believe that there wouldn't be this kind of impact on this character if something really messed up wasn't going on. And rather than sort of showing the behavior that was creating the impact, like to just stay with her, I think was a really bold choice. And basically by the time that I got to, there's a moment where Alice loses an earring and she says to her friend, you don't understand, I can't do another thing wrong. And that just like, you know, hit me like a truck, because I felt like that was so true and was so specific, and that so many people would really relate to that feeling. And I'd been looking for something a little more nuanced and quiet, and something where I could really be still and sort of trust that the performance would be compelling even in stillness, because I think I'm bad at that. So I was really excited by the tone and the material, and then the subject matter was also very personal to me, so it just felt like just really meant to be and really special.
Yeah, you've spoken about how you experienced a form of emotional or verbal abuse in the past, and I was wondering why it was important for you to like tell a really true to life portrayal of that story and how that can have an effect on a person.
Yeah, it's funny. This was I was sort of more involved in the editing process with this film than I ever have been, even on other films where I've been an EP, because I did feel very personally connected to it, and it was so important to me to kind of not, whenever possible, to not take the out of like the black and white thing, you know, to never have an altercation that reached a level where anybody in the audience would go, oh, okay, so he is abusive. You know, that like it shouldn't take you getting thrown against a wall to know that you're in an abusive relationship and you deserve to leave. And it was really important to me to, I think I actually said to Mary at one point during the many, you know, editing phases, that the first day that I met Wumi, who plays Sophie, she is so sweet, just so radiant, so kind. And she was talking about how she was so excited to see my performance in the movie. She was like, it's gonna be so great. And we were talking about the script and how we both liked that it didn't really show you what was going on. And I was saying, like, I really hope that works. And she, you know, even without the kind of evidence of what's going on. And she was like, well, Anna, you're the evidence. And she was talking about the performance, but it really impacted me to hear that, because that's kind of the recovery process, is trusting that you are the evidence, because that's all you have is your experience. And it was therefore equally important to me to trust that the audience would see that Alice is the evidence, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That, like, we don't have to see a ton of Simon's behavior because we see the impact it's had on her and we trust her. And that, like, became this kind of, like, very important thing for me, to feel like we can trust Alice, and that means I can trust myself, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And I was wondering if you felt like, as a genre, this, like, dark kind of, like, psychological thriller, did you feel like that was a departure for you at all when you took the role?
I mean, I definitely knew that, how do I explain this? It's like, I knew that I usually get hired to do a certain thing, and even if the genre is a little bit different, but you know, I also knew that I was going to be giving a performance which is not really the performance that I'm usually hired to give. So I did actually wonder at certain points if, like, people behind the camera, like, thought that had been kind of a bait and switch. But I think that it just felt right to me, and I just knew, kind of without thinking about it, I always knew, like, the more or less, like, the truth of what she would be in at any given moment. Like, a thing I've talked about is that there was a day where we were, like, stealing a shot of Alice sitting in a hammock, and Mary like, gave me a book and was like, maybe you're reading. And I was like, oh, I can totally be holding the book, but I can't read. Like, you're so in fight or flight that you can't read more than, like, a paragraph. So, and it was weird because when I said that, it was like, oh, it's weird that I know that. You know, it was like almost like, oh, that's so messed up for Alice, which was easier to acknowledge than to acknowledge how messed up that was in my own life. So it was a really fascinating intersection of, like, giving this performance and kind of knowing it inside and out, and also being able to then acknowledge, like, oh, there's stuff that I haven't really looked at that I probably need to dig further into.
Yeah, well, into that, and what advice would you give to someone going through a similar experience to Alice's?
That's really hard, because I've thought about, I've thought so much about, like, what do I wish somebody had said to me? And, like, there's nothing. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that I just wasn't ready to hear it, if that makes sense. So I think if you can afford it, go to therapy. And if you can't afford it, maybe check out Al-Anon. And I think that the most important thing would be, if you think might be in this kind of situation, you can definitely obsess about it online and watch all the YouTube videos and articles and order the books and stuff, and that's helpful in its own way, but it's always going to be, like, relational stuff that helps you the most. And so, like, being around other people, whether that's, like, in a support group or a therapist or your friends, I think is the most valuable thing. Because I think that's where you can get the most information about your own experience, is when you're in the company of others.